Leadership in many countries has undermined the development of true leadership. True leadership focuses on the vision for the next generation. True leadership focuses on our young people who are rising and working hard on solving issues around the world today. True leadership focuses on improving the nation for the sake of the next generation. True leadership never develops corruption, and this is what has destroyed most countries. But I must also remind you that there are other types of candidates we call leaders. These candidates never had a vision for the next generation. These candidates promise us things but don't deliver. These are the leaders who never thought about the next generation. They give us big promises like making the world a better place for our kids, but they fall short. Today, many countries are poor because they are poorly governed, but young people around the world must ask each other questions in matters of working together to produce a new direction of true leadership. Young people, we must realize that today is about us, and we must thrive together for a greater tomorrow. We must not forget that corruption is a virus that has thrived for too long in our society, hurting innocent people who don't know their direction. Today, the system punishes the victims but never punishes the actual criminals. This is the world today. But we must thrive together for a new course, for a new journey, for a new system. We must recognize those that will be the right leaders. The greatest tragedy in future leadership is corruption. We have seen how much damage corruption has caused in most countries. Therefore, we must not carry on the idea of punishing innocent people and electing corrupt leaders into offices. If one is asked to speak about corruption, one must hold the view of why corruption cannot be in our offices. One must hold the view of why corruption cannot be in our governments. The failure of our next generation is not because of shortage of participants. The failure of our future leadership is not the lack of education. The failure of our future is not a lack of true leadership. The failure of our future generation is not a lack of materials or advanced technology. This brings me to the question of what is the problem. The problem today is that the system has successfully created an environment that allows corruption, injustice, and unauthorized leaders to manipulate others who are thriving towards their success. We have successfully created an environment that ensures those that hold treasure occupy power. True leadership has lost its recognition among our leaders. It is the culture that we have advanced over the years. The culture celebrates power-hungry people, and those can only be wealthy people. Therefore, we must reject this culture. If we do not reject the mistreatment of power, we are always going to be victims of stagnation. Therefore, we must succeed in the fight against corruption. But the question is, how are we going to overcome this tragedy? The answer is, we must recognize the source of corruption. Most corrupt leaders are those who promise people the world. They promise us something, they deliver nothing. They allow people to dream but then squash those dreams. A true leader must not just make promises to the people, but produce ideas and permanent solutions. We must not stand promises that never work. We must reject the culture of corruption which we have evolved over the years. This culture of deciding who dies and who lives, this idea of celebrating the richness and undermining the rest. We must remember what's ours. We must remember our great true leaders. What would they do if they were here today? What would they remind us of? I think they would remind us that corruption can be fought. They would remind us to love one another. They would remind us of the importance of togetherness. We are the victims of a system that has damaged us almost the point of no return. We must not let this continue and be ignorant of what is happening. But I believe that change is going to come. I believe it can be done. We must elect leaders that have meaning to our society. We must elect secretaries that brings meaningful work to our society. We must become creative and discover new leadership concepts. So much potential in our young people that we must discover. Women and men who engage in corruption must be punished in accordance with the law, and they must be removed from power. It is important to create leadership that it is aggressive to people in power participating in corruption. In order for us to have a safe environment, we must have meaningful laws. We must reject the idea of calling people names. We must recognize the kind of leadership we have. The question should be, are they true leaders or leaders that hide behind their titles? So, how can we fight corruption? The only way to fight against corruption is to go deep into people's minds. It is impossible for someone to change if their values are still the same. Behavior doesn't change until thinking changes. And thinking doesn't change until beliefs change. The kind of leadership we have is confused leadership. We must open our eyes and realize that leadership is for the people, by the people. We have the power to change who can and cannot be leaders of our futures. It is time to create a new world.